Today's passage is the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verses 7 to 15. We often remark how time flies and how we can't believe it's autumn already, or how quickly the holidays go. But it must have been very strange in the year 1582 when Teresa of Avila died. Her feast day is celebrated on the 15th of October, although she actually died on the 4th of October. But the very next day, a reformed calendar was adopted, which meant omitting 11 days from October that year. Imagine how suddenly November must have arrived. Today's passage is provided in full for those whose Bibles don't include the Apocrypha. Wisdom in the Bible is generally given the female gender, which is an exception to the prevailing use of male pronouns for words about aspects of God. We see this in Proverbs as well. It's a good passage for a female saint and a figure of great spiritual wisdom as it celebrates the wisdom of God. The wisdom of Solomon, attributed to King Solomon, the son of David, because he was famous for his wisdom. You may remember that God offered him a gift and he chose wisdom rather than wealth or long life, so he got those as well. However, the book is in Greek and it reflects a much later period, so it's more likely that it was written by someone centuries later between the Testaments. It's made very clear that the source of wisdom is God, and the way wisdom is personified in Scripture shows that she is understood as an aspect of the divine. In the New Testament, we find Paul describing Christ as the wisdom of God. So wisdom is different from knowledge. It's not about facts. It's more a spiritual, mystical and philosophical concept. Wisdom gives insight and deeper understanding. Teresa of Avila, born into an aristocratic Spanish family, was a nun and a mystic. She had intense mystical experiences in prayer, and she wrote about it. You can still buy two of her books, The Way of Perfection and The Interior Castle. She was also very active in reforming the Carmelite order, which meant involving her in a lot of conflict and opposition, politics and legal wrangles. Her health was poor as well. She was seriously ill as a child and never entirely recovered. Her refuge and source of strength was prayer, although it's hard to know where she found time for prayer with all the pressures on her. For her, prayer was a process of entering more deeply into oneself at the same time as developing an intimacy with God. The picture of the castle that she writes about is of moving through a series of rooms from the outside towards the centre, which represents complete union with God. When we reach that stage, we've also arrived at the centre of ourselves. If this sounds idealistic, it helps that Teresa was very honest in her writing about her own experience of prayer, how difficult it was. She talks of disappointment, frustration, boredom, many struggles. And it was 20 years before she attained her deep mystical insights. She repeatedly said, "Whatever happens, never stop praying." She warned us not to expect an easy path. After all, looking at Jesus and the trials he went through, as well as her own sufferings, Teresa is reputed to have said to God, "If this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few." Perhaps the most famous quote from Teresa is the one that's coming up, and its advice is timeless. It would be a mistake for us to think that people have never been through plague or social upheaval or widespread suffering before. There was plenty of all that in the 16th century, a time of great upheaval in many ways. And in that world, Teresa said, "Let nothing disturb you, let nothing frighten you. Though all things pass, God does not change. Patience wins all things. He lacks nothing who possesses God, for God alone suffices.